Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode, and you are in for a treat today because I have with me Art Mueller. Art, first of all, welcome and thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me.
Thanks so much, Tom, and thank you everyone for joining us today.
Art, could you tell our audience about your professional background?
It'd be great, Tom, to talk about this a little bit. I think you and I talked a little bit before about this. That I'm an attorney by background, but I've been in compliance programs for over 20 years, and specifically anti-financial crime programs across a number of financial institutions, including years at American Express, UBS, Commerce Bank, Rabobank. I spent 6+ years as the BSA AML and sanctions officer for Rabobank North America, where I had 40 plus AML and sanctions professionals sitting under me. I joined WorkFusion in 2022 as it was on the cutting edge of AI machine learning in the financial services industry, and in particular for anti-financial crime. WorkFusion's productized and standardized certain financial crime and AI machine learning use cases, creating a number of out-of-the-box solutions to screening KYC, investigations, customer service, as well as customizable solutions as well. I felt joining WorkFusion, my background in fin crime really gave me a unique perspective here, right? Able to understand and empathize with our customers and prospects. I've walked in their shoes. I've experienced their challenges, their pain points, and also you try to work, how do you work those through to a resolution? I think back on my experience in my current role and my prior life and how much automation within those programs, AI, machine learning that we're seeing now, have really helped in the risk management and risk mitigation of those programs, helping me to have a more effective program. So again, I feel like I'm in a unique position here, having this industry experience and now bringing it to life in this reg tech that I work for in WorkFusion.
Art, one of the things that intrigued me about your professional background is, I don't want to say you're an old guy or you were there in the early days, but you've been in this field for quite some time. And you saw the AML field in the financial industry and financial services really mature, starting literally with spreadsheets going forward and suspicious activity reports and literally thousands of pieces of information, which the financial industry and other regulated industries were really required for business reasons to automate. And it seems like to me you brought that experience to a much broader group of customers or potential customers, i.e. non-regulated. If that's a fair assessment or a fair track of what you've been doing, is that fair or was it something different?
No, it's Tom, that is a great point and a very fair assessment. I mean, to your point, I'm old enough to remember manually checking an OFAC list against a customer list, right? I'm old enough to remember looking at spreadsheets as opposed to a transaction monitoring alert when trying to dig through a stack of needles to find a specific needle, I think it was, right? So no, I remember that. And again, it really helped me, I think, from a perspective standpoint, being in WorkFusion and being able to bring that to other organizations. I look at where we're at right now with AI, machine learning, and automation within FinCrime programs. And it takes me back to where we were 20, 25 years ago when we started to first see those initial screening applications, those initial transaction monitoring applications that automated some of this work, right? I really see we're at the precipice of a sea change here, right? This year, last year, in these last couple of years, this is really where I'm seeing the industry headed. And it's great to be on, I think, that boat going out to sea right now.
So it struck me in reviewing your professional background and then reviewing WorkFusion exactly what you said. Obviously, we couldn't get to where we got without that background and without that 20 years of learning how to do it. But what I saw in my review of WorkFusion was either a company on the precipice or perhaps has stepped over in utilizing generative AI, utilizing machine learning in a wide variety of strategies, literally for both regulated and non-regulated industries. And that, if that's a fair assessment, could you tell us a little bit more about WorkFusion and why you are so excited to come on board? And don't worry
Yeah,
about the dog. I got a dog. Everybody knows we got dogs.
no problem. And the WorkFusion it's a reg tech firm focused on bringing AI, machine learning, automation solutions to financial institutions, mainly through what we call digital workers, right? And then mostly focused on financial crime, right? Our AI enabled digital workers augmented traditional fin crime teams or KYC teams by performing the highly skilled or even the redundant rote manual tasks that operational areas that have done in the past, whether it's customer service, onboarding, KYC, anti-money laundering pieces, sanction screening, investigations, right? The WorkFusion digital workforce learns as well through what we call human in the loop. We have platform and we have digital workers, but we lead with those digital workers because they are use cases that have been deployed at other financial institutions that we productize, standardize for easy deployment within other customers. And I think that's a big win for the industry. It's not custom. It's not something that we have to come in there and build custom for a customer. That sounded interesting, but it's custom for a customer. We actually bring it in as a product to them to sell them. So
Art, the other thing that really struck me about WorkFusion is we've talked about financial crime screening. We talked about anti-money laundering. We talked a little bit about sanction screening and how years ago you might have to do that manually or literally upload the BSA OPAC list every week into your database or your SharePoint. But WorkFusion is really, I saw a company with a much broader solution or series of solutions that can help companies with a wide variety of risks. So you've got adverse media monitoring, you've got transaction monitoring, you've got the thing that really intrigued me was your customer life cycle and how you're able to incorporate all of this to give your customers, banks and financial institutions, a very robust picture of who they're doing business with, but also for potentially a customer to improve their own business process.
yeah, I think that's right. I mean, looking at how we can help a customer orchestrate a workflow for their customer life cycle, whether it's the onboarding pieces to it, in which we can use IDP technology to review documents, extract information from those documents, put it where it needs to go, and then and then classify those documents and take those documents, put them in a document repository, right? Things along those lines. And then going forward, automating a lot of the periodic review that has to happen. How many firms spend a ton of time, resources around a 1, 3, 4 periodic review cadence for their customer base, right? If we can automate that, really get triggers into that base and see what's material, what's relevant, what has changed for that customer from an automated standpoint, and then only trigger that review if necessary because we've had a change. Now we need to look at. I think it really helps provide a better picture to the customer, of the customer, I should say. And then around that, I look at bringing automation, machine learning, maybe you mentioned earlier, a little Gen AI into this as well, into the risk management and mitigation of the firm, and really being able to see that 30, 50,000 foot level that maybe is not available to one or two analysts that are looking at the customer, or even let's say one relationship manager. Maybe we have multiple relationships within a financial institution with the same customer, but now you might be able to see everything by looking on top of it with a Gen AI tool or some machine learning or AI that wasn't available a few years ago. I mean, to me, that's a big win for organizations. I talked about spreadsheets earlier. Again, I remember in one investigation I was running where I was going through a customer's account and I kept finding more and more accounts as I was going through the statements. Why did I have a transaction to this customer or to this account? And why is it going to that account? None of the accounts were linked, but I ended up with something like 75 different accounts linked to this customer, which I'll tell you, if I had automation or some kind of AI or Gen AI to help me with that process, it would have been a game changer. Instead of spending the week going through all of that data, I probably could have got that in an hour at the most, right? So again, that's just a big win, I think, going forward that we can have by deploying this type of technology into the programs.
So the at least in the non-regulated space, I tell people that onboarding, the customer KYC, the due diligence process, everything you do up to the point where you sign the contract is certainly important. But once you sign the contract, that's where the real work starts because you have to manage that relationship. What I thought I heard you say is not that what I said is absolutely right, but the tools of WorkFusion really allows you to do that work post contract signing when the real danger can start. Would that be fair?
I think that's a fair point on this, right? So again, you can do so much work on the customer upfront around that in the risk management and mitigation. But it's once that relationship gets established and you start seeing transactions and you start seeing additional information points for that customer that maybe you didn't have before, right? Now you see maybe it's a corporate customer and now you have, suppliers that you didn't know about beforehand, right? That you now see within the channel, right? And now you can actually maybe do adverse media across all those customers, all those vendors or suppliers that they have, as opposed to the previously where maybe you couldn't do them all, right? So again, I think you can really manage and mitigate the risk within the entire customer relationship and within the fin crime programs much more efficiently and effectively, and most importantly, effectively. Now, if you bring in AI and machine learning and automation into your program.
That brings us really to the next point I wanted to talk to you about WorkFusion. But before we get there, I have to pick up on what I think is incredibly significant that if vendors in the supply chain pop up, that you're able to do adverse media screening for a customer to say, we have these additional data points. Here's what the data has shown us, and potentially help a customer avoid or mitigate or even prevent something untoward.
Yeah, you look at an adverse media screening process, and it's usually very manual. You have to go into a number of articles, and one, you have to do the searches, I should say, right? That's one thing. Two, you then have to read through the different articles. Go back to one of my prior shops in which there was really no limits to saying, hey, we only read the top 20 articles that come up on a Google search. It was, you need to kind of go through all the different pages in that, which was a lot of work to deal with that, right? A lot of manual review around it. What AI and machine learning can bring to this, right? And specifically our digital worker, Evelyn, is that she can go out there, she can go get the articles, she can read the articles, she can understand sentiment in the articles, vocality in the articles, and actually make dispositions around that. Is it our client? Is this a material article or not? Is it something that the firm cares about? So these are the types of things that you can automate, and it really takes a lot of that manual work away and will get your team focused on those articles that matter, right? That adverse media that comes up that matters. I think what gets lost in adverse media searches as well and reviews is that most customers will not have adverse media, right? Most of them will not. And I think that gets lost, right? Because there are so many false positives, so many articles where it's not really the client, but it's a similar name around that, right? But it comes up in the search because we're using fuzzy logic or something around that search. So, yeah, I think again, it's a very important thing. And again, I think it allows you to expand what you're doing in your program, allows for better risk management and mitigation within the program, and it frees your team up to focus on those higher risk items that come up in that adverse media screening.
Part of what intrigued me about WorkFusion is the digital workforce of WorkFusion, Tara, and how Tara can help companies stop the bad guys. So could you just sort of go into the digital workforce, how your customers are able to use it? Who is Tara and how does she help stop the bad guys?
So our digital workforce are, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, that they're use cases that we've worked on with financial institutions that we've now taken those use cases in an AI, machine learning, and productize them, standardize, we have pre-built connectors to, let's say, known software within the industry, such as a Furco or Bridger or Thomson Reuters, right? So we're able to just connect very easily to those types of system. and actually just deploy very quickly around it. So we have these use cases, and what we've done is we've also personified those use cases. As I mentioned, we've created a digital worker that's basically the equivalent of a L1 analyst that can go out, do the hunter gatherer work that's necessary. They're able to actually pick up alerts, read alerts, work an alert that comes up, and then disposition that alert as well and put it back into a screening application, right? Or a TM application. So we're able to work that type of L1 analyst work with the digital workers. And we have specific digital workers that we've deployed as well, right? A couple in the sanction space, right? Evelyn and Tara. I mentioned Evelyn before, and you just mentioned Tara. Evelyn is referential data and adverse media screening. Tara is payment screening, right? An L1 analyst in that. We also have Isaac, who is the transaction monitoring and fraud investigator. Then we have KYC CDD analysts, right? They are Kendrick, Daryl, and Kayla. Then we have customer service, which is Casey. I'll pick up a little bit of an example here with Tara. So Tara is a payment screening analyst. She basically is like a payment screening analyst that comes to a firm with like 3 years experience. And she's a pre-trained model that's able to integrate with a FERCO continuity or whatever type of screening application that you're currently using. She will pick up that alert that comes out of that system, work it just like an L1 analyst would work it. So if Tara needs to go out to a third-party source, whether internal or external, she can do that. If she needs to do a geolocation lookup, right, on where, if it happens to be a hit on a location, she can do that as well, just like your analyst would do it. Then she'll write a human narrative around that alert and put that alert back into that screening software, just like your own analyst would do on an L1. And what you do is it allows the firm to scale up. It allows the firm, I think, more consistency within their program as well. And again, I think it just provides more risk management, more mitigation within the program. I'll talk to my experience here. And I think every single voluntary self-disclosure I filed with OFAC, Tom, has been because of a human error, right? Somebody made a mistake. They had a tough Monday morning. Maybe they had a tough Friday morning, right? And they're so inundated and they're so conditioned on payment screening that everything is a false positive. Most firms, it's 99.9%, if not higher, of false positive rates on those alerts, right? So what happens when you're so used to hitting the enter key and saying, this is a false positive, false positive, false positive? You make that one mistake when you have the one true positive that comes up, right? With Tara, she's going to look at everything independently and not, let's say, get that false positive fatigue or conditioning is what I would say.
It also strikes me that Tara really depends on the human in the loop, but she brings really a level of sophistication to us humans that we might, as you said, just might miss.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Again, she won't get tired. She'll continue to work. She'll pick up the alerts. You won't have a delay of, let's say, alerts get generated on a payment. An analyst might not pick that up for 3 or 4 hours, to be honest with you, right? But Tara's going to consistently work these alerts, right? And pick those up. And you're probably going to have a better customer experience around it as well. But again, she'll work each alert separately. She won't worry about, let's say, hey, I'm having a bad day or I'm having a conversation with my neighbor that I'm talking with right now, and then hit that enter key and it goes out the door. And now you have a voluntary self-disclosure or some kind of issue to deal with. Again, she's going to provide a consistency of narratives and reviews that are based on your procedures. And again, she won't deviate from that because that's what she's trained on.
Based on your procedure. I absolutely love that phrase. I'm going to rephrase it just a little bit to say she's going to see the anomalies, the patterns and raked leaves that you or I might not see, or at least tell us, hey, Tom, hey, Art, take a look here. Would that be fair?
I think that's fair. I mean, Tara, one of the things that she can do is if an alert gets generated and it's, let's say, Russia or some town or St. Petersburg or something along those lines, or Moscow, she can automatically escalate that to an L2 or L3 analyst, right? And just bypass reviewing it and say, hey, there's more risk in this transaction, right? And I'm just going to send it to an L2 to do that additional research, or L3 to do that additional research. And this way we make sure that nothing gets missed and no analyst makes a mistake. Again, better risk management, better risk mitigation, more effective program around what she's able to bring to the table.
Once again, I'm going to rephrase that a little bit to try to articulate what I thought I heard it was a great business process. Number one, the frontline person is not being asked to make that decision. They're being asked to flag an anomaly, or at least see that anomaly has been flagged. Number two, you're putting, as my wife would say, a second set of eyes on it, whether that be an L2 or L3. Three, you're sending it to someone with additional training or additional skill level that can either identify a false positive or do the additional research, bring to bear additional tools, whether those are AI digital tools or other tools, to determine is something very sophisticated going on here that could not only cause us a regulatory hiccup, but perhaps even a reputational hiccup as well.
That's exactly right, Tom. I'll give you an example of this as well, right? We were going through a proof of value with a prospect, and they provided us 2 months worth of alerts to run through Tara and have her work, right? So, our solutions consultant that was doing the work around the proof of value, he comes to me and he says, "Hey, Art, look at this alert. What would you have done with this? Why did they say this was a false positive, and why did they say this should not get escalated?" So I'm looking through it, and then I'm looking at the procedures for for that firm, and I'm like, the analyst actually made a mistake. The analyst should have escalated that. There were two exact matches on name and location, and according to their procedures, that should have been escalated to the level 2 analyst to compliance to review, and it wasn't. It was work. And I couldn't tell from what was in the alert right there why that level 1 analyst actually made that decision to not escalate that, even though within their procedures, they had two exact matches, one location, one name, and they should have escalated that. So I said, let's go back and say, this is an example of Tara actually finding something and actually escalating, because we said escalate, right? And this is something that Tara was going to escalate. And they're like, the analyst here said, you don't, but the analyst was wrong. So again, that's the type of thing that she consistently will work those procedures that you have and not make that type of mistake.
I have a great final question, which
Sure.
is the 5 ways AI is transforming financial crimes compliance. I'll just pitch that to you and just go through it.
Okay, great.
All right.
Hey, Tom. Yeah, on this one, say I would say this around that question. As I noted above before earlier on, I believe we're on the precipice of a major change for fin crime programs, just as we saw 20, 25 years ago, right? I'd also say that we're going to move away from the manually conducted processes and documentation, getting away from that rote, mundane, repetitive tasks conducted every day in fin crime programs. Then I'd say the focus will truly be on risk management and risk mitigation, right? It's a theme that continually comes up with me here, because maybe that's my old BSA AML officer hat being on, but that's how I view things. How do I get a more effective program? How do I do better risk management and mitigation of the program as well? You just mentioned effectiveness. We'll see effectiveness increases through efficiency gains, right? Hunter-gatherer work, false positives will no longer be big challenges within programs. Because right now, how many armies of analysts do we employ within the industry that's really focused on 90% of its transaction monitoring investigators' work is hunter-gatherer work, right? 99% of the work of a transaction screening analyst ends up being false positives, right? That they're just hitting the enter key, we're done. I'd say, I mentioned this earlier, I think we'll get more insights into the risks of clients and transactions. We'll get that 50,000 foot view. We'll draw connections with customers and transactions that maybe we weren't able to see beforehand. I think about Gen AI and a chat GPT type of tool that you can use within an organization where you say, hey, go look at these transactions of the customer. You're telling the artificial intelligence to go do it. Tell me what you're seeing. Summarize that for me. Where are the high risk locations that we need to be concerned with within that customer's transactions? You're going to see those things without maybe having to run a pivot table that we've had to do in this front, right? Yeah. I would say I'd say you're going to get more job satisfaction from an analyst, right? Less turnover. Because again, you're not focused on that mundane, redundant work that's hitting the enter key or taking a document, reading a document, understanding what's in the document, then extracting information, then classifying that document. And you have a naming convention that you have to put on that document. And guess what happens? It goes to the netherworld somewhere because you put the wrong naming convention on it. I've been in way too many exams where where you can't find a document because named incorrectly and went to the wrong file. So I think all of those things are how we're going to see AI, machine learning, automation change fin crime programs.
Wow. The one I'm going to pick up on is the last one because, frankly, you are the only person who has talked about AI increasing worker satisfaction, generative AI increasing your employee retention, AI increasing not just worker productivity, but them wanting to be there doing that job because they are literally mentally challenged. And that is such a huge point that if we can get away from what we started off with and SharePoint, Excel, and moving forward to people really using their intellects, I think that's going to engage the workforce. I talk to a lot of HR types, and they say that employee acquisition and retention will be the key differentiator for businesses. And I'm going to say that if you embrace AI and generative AI, you can actually get both of those, both acquisition and retention.
Yeah.
So kudos.
Thanks so much on that, Tom. I could talk to some clients that their goal is not reducing headcount. It's trying to create a better experience for their current teams, right? It's trying to stem that flow from, you mentioned that hamster wheel of recruit, onboard, train, and then somebody leaves to go for a couple $1,000s elsewhere. So I think these are the types of things that will really help the industry going forward. I'm telling you, the analyst will feel much more engaged. You really feel like you're doing that high quality work when you're really an editor to the file as opposed to the author. You kind of really like, again, you're analyzing what's been put in front of you as opposed to, again, go dig there and got to go to that system there. I think it's going to be a much better experience for those analysts.
Art, unfortunately, we are near the end of our time for this episode. But before we leave, I wanted to ask you if our listeners wanted more information on WorkFusion or perhaps connect with you, what might be the best place or places for them to go?
I think you can go to our website. You can contact me as well. My email is .com. I think there's go to LinkedIn. I have a LinkedIn profile, Arthur Mueller. You can go on there as well and reach out at that point to catch up with me as well. There's a lot of different ways to go.
Art, I wanted to thank you again for taking the time to visit with me. I look forward to continuing our conversation.
Great. Thanks so much, Tom. I appreciate it. And thanks everyone for listening today.